Welcome to the Time for Heroes podcast.
Andy MacLeod has written 2 books. He's taken his solo show to Edinburgh Fringe. He's been a musician, he's been a promoter, he's been a manager, he's been a label boss, and he's also a Tottenham fan for his sins. So we're going to talk about all that, but what I like to do at the start, Andy, is go right back to the start. It was like life like for a young Andy MacLeod growing up.
Oh, God. Going back to my childhood. I just had a thing flash up on my screen. It's gone away now. That's good. Growing up, right. Well, I was born in London. I'm like a sort of plastic Scot, really, because both my parents from Edinburgh and they moved down. I always, we were always on the move a bit. So I grew up in London, off in Chelsea, then down to Dulwich. I should really support Chelsea, shouldn't I? I was born in Chelsea. But they are don't start me on Chelsea, God. Maybe, Chelsea, then down to South London, Dulwich. Then we moved out of London to Oxfordshire, then down to Sussex, near Brighton, Winnie the Pooh country. Mm-hmm. And then when I was about 17, I went back up to London. Just all I had in my mind was to form a band, really. So I scraped into a City of London Poly, and I thought, I've got 3 years. I'm going to form a band, and that's what I did. But you probably want to go. Do you want to go earlier into does it get Freudian? Are you going to?
I touch on what was life like in the house. Did you have a musical upbringing at an early age?
Not at all, really. No. It was really, really football for me as a young kid. It was. I can remember seeing West Ham v Fulham FA Cup final 1975, and that sort of green rectangle on the screen. And my dad, he was more a rugby guy. He didn't really like football, but I just would badger. And where we were living, there was not really any we were kind of out in the suburbs, so there wasn't any Oxford United for a bit, and then Brighton. And I remember I even wrote a letter to my dad, go, please, can we? And I'd become an obsessed Liverpool fan because it was the era of Kenny Dalglish and Souness, and they were like the best team. So yeah, for me, it was all football. I go around in a Liverpool football kit and football boots, and I wanted to be a professional footballer. So you can see where this is going. That then gets replaced by wanting to be a rock star, you know.
Yeah.
But eventually I was just captivated by the stadium. Eventually went to see Liverpool v Arsenal Charity Shield. Then went to see England, Argentina at Wembley. Like just magical trips to London. Saw Maradona's first ever game. I was about 10 or 11.
Wow.
And so football, it was all consuming. And at some point, I don't know what it was, maybe, that start of teenage, you go from a kind of innocence to adolescence, and suddenly it's music, top of the pops.
Yeah.
And then, the dream shifts. It's like, actually, that looks even more fun.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think most people in the music industry are field footballers, aren't they?
That is glory hunter. Yeah. And
how did you shift from Liverpool to Tottenham then?
Well, when I then got to London back to being a student, I had a sort of weekend job working at Arsenal and Tottenham selling like the hot dogs for a catering company. So one Saturday I'd do Arsenal, the next Saturday I'd be at Tottenham. And I was living in Golders Green at the time. And everyone was, my flatmate Jeff, the chef, was a big Arsenal fan. And I just suddenly realised this was the era of George Graham's Arsenal winning 1-0, boring Arsenal. And then I go to Tottenham and it would be Gascoigne, Lineker, you didn't know what, it would be 5-3, 4-all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Gascoigne really and I suddenly thought, why do I support Liverpool? I just got won over by Tottenham. I think there was the FA Cup. I suddenly thought, I'm going to become a Tottenham fan. And also, a lot of Tottenham fans deep down, they support Tottenham because they hate Arsenal so much. You're not an Arsenal fan, are you?
No, not at all.
Yeah, so there's that kind of, but there's a love-hate thing with Arsenal. It's more a hate with Chelsea because they just beat us all the time. But But coming out of this season, just as an aside, it just became like potential living nightmare. Everyone where I live now, everyone's dressed in red as Arsenal, and they're gonna get the quadruple, and we were going to get relegated. So, but luckily, it didn't come to pass.
My brother-in-law is a West Ham fan, so he'll not be listening to this one.
None of the London clubs hate Tottenham. They all. We're more popular with the Man Cities and Liverpool and Man U. I think, but we're not popular in London.
Obviously, I'm a Celtic fan, so
Okay.
Like the Ange Postecoglou thing as well. Like
Yeah.
he should never have left us.
Yeah.
I knew when he left and went to use, I thought he's not gonna, his style of football isn't going to be welcomed in there. And I mean, he won you a European trophy, and
Yeah.
you still get rid of him.
And I loved him. I wish he'd been given another chance. I think after we won that European Cup, it's like I'd love to have seen him with the full team back. And then, of course, there was the final game of the season. We'd won the European Cup, and there was a final game against Brighton. And the players came out, and they were still pissed. And they scored, and it was 1-0. And then Brighton thumped us 4-1. I thought, oh, he's gone now because. But yeah, I think the players it would have been great to. I loved him. Yeah, but. Yeah.
I think if you get that guy, then you've got him for life, man. He's just, there's something about him.
Yeah.
Celtic have never been the same.
Yeah.
We've never been the same for the left, man. I mean, we won a double last season. It was still one of the worst seasons we've had.
Maybe he'll go back. Is he with anyone at the moment? Maybe.
No, he's not. I don't think he does that either. I don't think he goes back in his career.
Yeah, he's very forwards, isn't he?
Yeah. So I mean, so musically, then once you got to London, and you interested in forming a band, what was your sort of musical influences at that time?
Well, the band that really stole my heart initially were Madness. I mean, I was just the biggest Madness fan. I just loved their kind of, and I got quite big into all the sort of Simple Minds, U2, that kind of era, big Simple Minds fan. Weirdly, it was 40 years since the Milton Keynes Bowl show they did in 1986 with 60,000, and I went dressed as Jim Kerr, and I was like literally the only person of 60,000 people. I borrowed I wore a big white shirt, black leggings. I borrowed my grand's beret. I thought everyone would be dressed as Jim Kerr. I got there, it's like, who's this guy dressed as a leprechaun? And of course, my mum said, if you lose that beret, you're going to be in trouble. And someone. Yeah, first thing that happened, someone grabbed it off my head and chucked it during "Don't You Forget About Me." I got bollocked. But funny, I fast forwarded. My brother said, "Oh, at least you're not dressing up as pop stars anymore." And of course, I'm in a Cure tribute band, so it hasn't changed. But yeah, then from Simple Minds U2, I kind of then got a bit more Indian. I really then fell for like the Smiths, the Cure, Echo and the Bunnymen, and from that it was just entering that kind of. I love that kind of world of Enemy, all those bands, and so I kind of arrived in London. Just that's it. I could just barely play guitar, really. I knew 3 chords. And I was just on such a mission. I thought, that's what I want to do. And so I was just on a recruitment drive. I thought I'd get better musicians in. And that's what kind of did,
And how did this recruitment drive go then? How did you kind of meet all your bandmates?
Yeah, literally first day at college, I was just in the lecture room. And this is kind of the story of the first book, which is Anoint My Head, How I Failed to Make it as a Britpop indie rock star. It kind of tells the story of arriving in London. I'm like the first day in the lecture, I'm looking around who could be in a band. There's this poor guy, Marcus, doing a politics degree. Someone said the book's actually about this poor guy from the Midlands that comes down to London to make life better for the disadvantaged and meets this complete nutter, promises him the big time. So we went on a kind of, and he'd actually auditioned to play Adrian Mole in the ITV show. So I thought, oh yeah, he's pretty much famous. So, and he couldn't play any instruments, but I just thought we got a flat together. I said, you've got to learn the bass. And he kind of, the thespian in him kind of went, okay, I'm up for this. The disadvantage can wait. And then I got my brother, his best mate. They were both really good musicians. I got them in on the band. And then there was a succession of different drummers, of course. And by the end of 3 years, we pretty much had a band. And we were a bit schizophrenic. We'd change the identity. 1 minute we kind of like want to be like, grunge, and then with this, and that, we hadn't really found our identity. But what did happen? We did quite a good demo, and that fell into the hands of a young Ricky Gervais, who was the ENTS officer at London University, and he rang. By this point, I'd graduated. I was working in a record shop, and I got this call from this random guy called Ricky saying, "Oh, I manage Suede, and I want to. Have you got a manager?" So I went to meet him, and then he became our manager for about 6 months. And through which time we were trying to ditch him for someone someone more serious, because the band thought he was a bit of a joker, you know. So that's the basic.
So what was Ricky like then? Was he? Did he have that comedian side even then? Was it hard to take him serious?
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of the joke of the book. It's like he was a bit like David Brent in some ways, but he was more self-aware. So he was very obviously, but none of us in a million years would have foreseen what was going to happen, because we just thought he was a bit of a joker. You know, I liked him because he liked us. You know, but he was quite. I mean, we did a demo and he jumped on vocals. You know, I've got an idea. You know, and he was. Great energy and all of that, but we, you know, to his credit, he got us an agent and he got us in a studio. But I'm still to this day flabbergasted by we became the band that didn't make it, but our manager did. It was the wrong way round.
Well, the guy's stratospheric, isn't he? Whatever he touches turns to gold nowadays.
Yeah, and the joke is a little bit with this new Edinburgh show. I'm kind of going up there, you know. Trying to vanquish him, you know, from like, if only I'm back, you know, just this one last chance, he could get our demo on the radio. But you know, so
obviously the band, am I right in saying, was it called Pointy Birds?
The Pointy Birds, one of the reasons why we didn't.
Yeah. So who came up with the name? Was that Ricky?
Yeah, no, that was me. I mean, I think that's why Ricky liked us. Because I loved that film. Part of the reason, one of the many reasons why we didn't make it, is I had this thought: no one's mixing music and comedy, and I thought, you know, I think I at the time liked the intersong banter as much as the songs, and I think Ricky. So we should have probably done the comedy circuit really, but the Steve Martin film, the Pointy Birds, Pointy, Anoint My Head, Anointy. Mm-hmm. So I thought that's the best. The band name came first, and then everything was shoehorned into it. Mm-hmm. Well, we were 5'8", we formed. I kind of went to uni, and we split up by 93. So, yeah, it was all early 90s, pre-Britpop. It was that sort of shoegaze, through Manchester, shoegaze, a bit of grunge. So we went from we were kind of like a baggy shoegaze grunge band, you know, and a bit like weirdly Blur, Suede, all those bands were on the same trajectory, the same time, doing the same thing, but they kind of found their voice and they would take it far more seriously than us. They weren't such a joke band, you know. And
so like around that time where you'd be gigging as well, were you gigging with any of these bands? Yeah, we were. Yeah, they were. I mean, there's one amazing flyer of the Camden Falcon, and it's something like there's the Pointy Birds playing with like mad cow disease on a Monday night, but on the rest of the flyer, there's like PJ Harvey, The Verve, Divine Comedy. There's just like all these bands that are going to go on, and you just see that vibrant hotbed that was going on then, you know. And yeah, we would cross. I think Brett from Suede we knew someone that knew Brett, and we always thinking, oh, you know, we're going to get on the Suede support, and he came to see us, and the gig was a disaster. But it was always they were just a few steps ahead, you know. And Ricky was like their ex-promoter manager, so we thought, oh yeah, we're next. But yeah, it didn't happen. But ultimately, through the band and all the connections you made, is set you instead for what's to come the rest of your days, really. So, when did you decide to get into promoting stuff like that? Well, I went again. I did another band we called Big Slice, and we decided to drop the comedy. And then what happened with that is we had a Moog player. A player came in on Moog, and I used to tell him to turn down in the rehearsal because it was ruining the songs. And then his side project was the Low Fidelity All Stars, and we went on to see them. They did a side project, you know, and they got a deal on the night. I thought, God, everyone's bloody making it. Even the record shop I was in was on the cover of the Oasis "What's the Story, Morning Glory" cover. So even the shop was becoming famous. I thought, and at that point, Sean, our guitarist, was also a music promoter, and he thought, sorry, I'm going to manage the lo-fis. And he said to me, do you want to do the Tuesdays at the Camden Falcon? And I was like, I don't want to become a music promoter, you know, but I was 27 and I thought I'll do a one-off. I did this one night at the Falcon, 3 bands. It's £100 to hire the room. You put on 3 bands, keep the ticket money, pay the bands and the rest, you know, and I loved it. I just did this one, you know, kind of night was busy. I thought, oh, well, maybe this is what I could do. And then one gig led to another. And it's like a kind of door opened. And then also it's weird, I think with bands, you don't really ever see the competition. Because either if you see a band that's better than you just go, oh, wankers. But when you're a promoter, you start seeing things through a more commercial lens. You see lots of bands. And that kind of made me start to realize, oh, yeah,
not quite as good as I thought we were. Maybe started to realise my limitations. I think I'm quite a natural. I like that compulsion to spread the word or to share. If I think something's good, my dad was there's an inner salesman in me, maybe. And I met this guy, Simon, came across this demo of these 3 girls called Tiny Two, who were like, in my head, it was ABBA meets Nirvana. It was around the time of Spice Girls, and I thought, they're going to be massive. We're going to sign a massive deal. And I got them a deal, with this indie called Fierce Panda, and they were the label that did singles.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did a single on Fierce Panda, you were going to get a big deal. But during the gig, Simon came down to see them. And during the gig, the guitarist's strings broke, and I kind of grabbed the guitar and I said, look, and I ran out of the venue. I ran down the road to my mate William's house thinking he'd be in, and he wasn't in. It's an absolute nightmare. And I kind of ran back to the venue 5 minutes later. They're still on stage, and I gave them back the guitar. Everyone's cheering, and it was still broken. And I thought, that's my career management over. But then Simon came up and goes, that was brilliant. Do you want a deal on Fierce Panda? And it saved my skin. And then Simon and me, that was the start of an amazing relationship, because he was working with me. He was releasing loads of singles, and I was doing gigs. So we formed a 25-year partnership, really, of we both loved gigs, and we ended up doing like 400 shows a year at one point. And we ended up doing, that whole post Britpop into that indie, we stumbled across all these massive bands who at the time none of us would have known. It's a bit like the Ricky thing. We came across Coldplay in a pub, and Bean and Arctic Monkeys, Killers. Just at the time, there was millions of other bands, but they're the ones we talk about because they all went on.
Yeah. So I mean, Simon is a previous guest on the podcast, I kind of, when doing the research on you and the Club Fandango thing came up, so I went back and listened to it, and honest, he's one of my early guests, and listening back to it last night, I thought that's one of the best interviews I've ever done, man. He's a brilliant guest. Obviously there's the Ricky Gervais connection there, obviously with you, and he had him at XFM and all that, so it seems as if you were made to kind of be together. Maybe you were the replacement for Steve Lamacq, because he seemed to be his nemesis in his early career.
Yeah, definitely. I think I was we fit really well, because I just remember thinking, well, we're both Tottenham fans, we both bonded. We kind of met, and then it was like, well, we're wearing the same coloured trainers, Adidas things. We both support Tom. We both agreed Talk Spirit of Eden was the greatest album of all time. We liked Midsummer Murder. We had just a lot in common. And his energy for bands. I mean, I'd never met anyone that was just so into gigs and new music. I thought I was, and he was like, oh my God, and he was a magnet for bands as well, because he had his label that was then growing. So my role ended up becoming, I used to try and pull the reins on him, he'd be like, oh, let's sign that, do that. And I'd be like, wow, we've already got a lot on. But it worked really well. With our heyday was that sort of Fandango in the early noughties. Yeah, it was a great time, really, yeah.
So, obviously you mentioned some of the bands, like for instance, like an Arctic Monkeys. So, like an early Arctic Monkeys, and you look at what they've went on to achieve, and they've evolved time and time again. So what was it like kind of working with them at the start?
Well, the word I got sent to a weird one, the Arctic Monkeys, because you had that sort of MySpace had just come out. It hadn't kind of kicked in yet, because it was right on the end of that period of the music industry where the gig was still the reveal of the band. The A&R had to see the gig to know what the band sounded like. And they're kind of perceived as the first MySpace band where, you could put your music up and build this audience, but it hadn't really, it was a few years off it really transforming the industry, where A&R no longer needed to go to gig, or they'd only go to gig if they liked the sound of them. So I got sent, I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, as a demo. And I just thought, I played it like 3 times. It's like, what a track. And I phoned the manager and I said, do you want a Dublin gig at Dublin Castle? And he turned out he'd been in this, I kind of knew him vaguely, that he'd been in this band Seafood. So he came down to the Dublin Castle to see it, because they were from Sheffield. And he said, yeah, we want a headline. And I was a bit like, no one wanted, the headline slot was the graveyard slot in those days, because we were kind of like an A&R club. And what you wanted was the first on slot or the middle slot, because the A&R, you were trying to get a deal, and they'd all come in early and then they'd go off. They didn't want to hang around till the end of the night. I said, really? He said, yeah, we're going to sell this out with the kids and we don't want any industry. And it was like this sort of fighting tour. I thought, yeah, I didn't really believe it. I said, no, but this demo's going, and it was it was such a masterclass, because what happened then in the build up to the gig did sell out in advance, and the industry were then like, we have to be at this gig. And the phone just wouldn't stop ringing. And I kept saying to the manager, you got like, it's going up the food chain. Now you got the head of there, the head of EMI, and it's going up to the chairman, without the PA to the chairman, we must be at this gig. And he was going, no one. And what two mad things transpired was, one, we took the phone off the hook in the office and it still rang, because if a phone's too many people trying to ring a number, it will still ring in an emergency. So that kind of gives you an idea of the amount of people ringing. I mean, it sounds like a kind of, and then the sound check sold out. Because obviously everyone thought, well, we can't get into the gig. The sound check was packed with A&R and industry trying to ingratiate themselves with the band. And it was on this one song. And of course, the manager arrived with Lawrence from Domino, a few industry. He goes, you sneak these in. And the gig was mental. It was just sort of like this. And I thought, well, God, are this band going to be any good? And it was like, they reminded me of the Hobbits at Lord of the Rings coming through this crowd, I thought. And they was just stage invasions. And someone had recorded it. It went round about a year ago. They played the Emirates Stadium, and someone unearthed a recording of that gig at the Dublin Castle. And I'm really pissed, going, oh, this band are going to be massive. So I sound like, I probably say that for every band, but and I got a bit of like, so they were the band I sort of got them to London, and then they got their deal. So they owe me a pint, which I want to get one day.
So would that's where, so you said all the big kind of music industry people were there. That's where Conor McNicholas, would he have been at this?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it was just really, because I think those A&R guys, if you weren't in that gig, you could get the sack. It's like your job is to ingratiate yourself with the band, because then if the label's going to put the deal in, you want that relationship already there. The hard thing with A&R, they'd say they'd have to ingratiate themselves with everyone in case that was the band,
Yeah.
So, but they wouldn't commit, But yeah, quite possibly would have been there.
Yeah, I can mind a comment for Conor McNicholas. He said that when he seen the Arctic Monkeys live and he heard all the fans singing the songs back before they'd even been out, he knew then that music had shifted and it was a different model, and the music press had lost their power.
Yeah, well, there was this lovely. I think what it was even more was they'd reinvented the wheel. They're just a great, great band, and he was funny. That thing about music and comedy that I'd always dreamt of doing, they were doing it in a really kind of more subtle, witty way. That the stories were hilarious. Being chucked out of a nightclub. All the kids could relate to it. And then they're just the energy of it was like the Beatles, really garagey kind of. And then, every song was being stopped and started because the kids were just every word. Yeah. Brilliant. Really good.
And what's the situation with Club Fandango now and promoting? Where are we at now? Like all these years later?
Yeah, we didn't. We got to around about 2019, and we were going to launch a radio Fandango. We've been doing loads and loads of gigs, and then probably because our main patch was really Camden, and we do Soho a bit. I think around that, everything moved east, and we were all getting a bit older. The new promoters coming in, and get those grassroots gigs to survive, you had to really run them for free, because there was just after 2012 music and dance, Boris Johnson brought that in. It was kind of to help venues in the regions, but what happened in London is just everything became a venue. So those venues, we were using those kind of, the kind of Bull and Gates and the ones that were proper music venues ended up going, it was a disaster in some ways. It was good for artists to be able to play, but then you book a band, they go, oh yeah, we've done 5 gigs already this week. So then the audience was saturated.
Yeah.
And then we ended up getting for 10 years quite addicted to Arts Council money, because it was the only way we could survive. We had to fill out these forms because we were booking bands from all around the country, but it became just unsustainable. We couldn't do hundreds of gigs to play to no one, and then just have this Arts Council covering the deficit. We were kind of like, well, that's to change. So we were going to form this Radio Fandango as a sort of platform, and then COVID hit, We had a 3, and that just kind of knocked out. And also, I turned 50 at that kind of point. My parents both got sick, and I then went on this. I went kind of the other way. I went, actually, I'm going to. I'd been writing a bit, and I had this book finished, so I just went for the book. I'm still managing and promoting, but I scaled it right back. And then the book and the shows and all that was just meant to be like just get the book out for my bandmates, really. And it had a whole life of its own, and it still has. And now I've signed this deal with Omnibus for the new book. I'm doing Edinburgh. It's been a lovely journey, but not one I was expecting at all. So now I'm here.
Yeah. So we'll get on to the books in a minute, but obviously, sticking on the promoting, obviously you mentioned all these bands. So one of the more recent ones is Fontaines DC.
Yeah.
So this band are massive now.
Yeah.
So what's it like? What was it like working with them and seeing their journey?
Well, Chris in the office would take credit for them, because by that point, when we did Fontaines, I was a bit more floating out, getting the names of the bands wrong. Like, who we got this week? Yeah, Fon what? And he got them over 3 times they played. He got them over from Ireland, and we put them on at the Finsbury. And, and then they went, I wouldn't have foreseen how big they got. But when they went back to Finsbury Park, played Finsbury Park 2 years ago, they put up the Club Fandango flyer, back to where it started. Because they played the little pub Finsbury, and then they're playing the big one. Mm-hmm. So Chris would know more about the ins and outs of working with them, because by that point we had this sort of office, and I was at that point more trying to keep the company going rather than being involved in the booking. And Chris was a student that had come through the London Met, where we did some lecturing. He was amazing. He kind of had that energy to find the new bands and do all that.
Yeah, because when you look at them now, obviously I'm up in Glasgow. I managed a band for about a year and a half there, and I no long gave it up. So see going to gigs and seeing all these grassroots bands, see the amount of bands that would throw in a Fontaines DC cover. Yeah. It seems to be that band's the main influence for the up and coming bands. At the moment.
We did a gig with our jumping ahead a little bit. We did our InCureables Cure tribute band with Nontaines SC. They're a Nontaines tribute from Sheffield, and they're absolutely amazing. But you could just see, just even them, the energy that they get, and they've got this crazy fan base now. But for Fontaines, there's just something. I think it's just really soulful. It's got that punk ethos, but it's quite soulful. Yeah, just again, it's just a really. I think my theory is you've got to be 10 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 to make it. And they're one of the 10 out of 10s. They're just really good at what they do, and they're their own sound.
They seem to come out, I think they kind of appeared at the same time as, or to me, they appeared at the same time as the Clockworks.
Yeah.
I think Alan McGee got behind the Clockworks. But I prefer Fontaines.
Yeah. There's something about them. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's a Celtic Topsy wear. Might be that. Might be. So it's at that point, obviously you had the first book. So that was coming out. Obviously, when I got Simon on, he'd just released his book. So was there a bit of competition between the two of you?
No, not really. Because I'd always thought, Simon's just one of the best writers I know. And I'd sort of, I got a C at English, I'm not a writer really, but I had lots of I just had some stories that I wanted to tell the story of the Pointy Birds, because I just thought it was a good, it's a book. What it ended up is a book about failure, really, as a book. And I didn't really realize, I thought, memoirs are normally about people that make it. So the idea was a memoir of a failed rock star. And then, of course, there's a huge audience for failed rock stars, because the vast majority of people in bands fail, don't they? It's only, what started happening? So, I was in a band that failed, so was I, because I put the word failure in. And I don't think I even realized that I'd failed till I wrote. Because my brother said, why don't you say how I failed? Because I was going to how I tried to make it. I go, I didn't fail, but I did the book. And I think Simon probably thought, I'd badger Simon. I said, why don't you, he's such a good writer. And he was always a bit like, oh, no. And then he just, I think one of the reasons may have been, I got a book out, and then he goes, I better get this done. And he went through all various, if you know Simon's stories, it became very cathartic for him after what he went through, which all documented in his book. It's been a great journey for him. And he's now doing his Chris book. But it's been really nice, the two of us, because we had this promoting partnership, and now we've got our books. Our first books came out soon, and now the second books. We'll meet up in the Good Mixer. He's telling me I won't do a spoiler all about the plan he's got for his new one. So it's great. Yeah,
brilliant. Then 2022, you brought the book to the Fringe. You adapted it into a solo show, the same as you're going to be doing this year.
Yeah.
How do you go about bringing that to stage?
Bloody difficult, because the first one, it was, such a learning. I can't believe I'm doing another, but the audio book is about 7 hours long, so you've got to try and condense that down to 52 minutes. But yet 52 minutes is, so it's no time, because you don't want to, but then it's a long time as well to stand on stage. But I had this amazing, just through different people who'd done it before and directors and just talking to people. This one guy said, the comedian Phil Nichols, I don't know, do you know him, the Canadian comedian? Mel set me up with him to
1337.
And he sort of said this amazing thing, is he said, your character Horace, that's my nickname, who wants to be a rock star, from my book, he's surrounded by 4 people within the book. One is Ricky Gervais saying, you can do it. There's Brett Anderson who's saying, I've already done it. There's my guy in the record shop, Bill, my boss, going, you can't do this. And then Marcus, my mate from Coventry, I shoehorned in the bank, going, are we really going to do it? And he said, just every scene you do, just have one of those 4. And then the game changer was playing some of the Pointy Birds songs. So I hadn't picked up the guitar for 30 years. I thought, I can't do that. And there was this lovely moment where I kind of realized, I can play those songs, but I'll play them for laughs now. So the show became the story of the Pointy Birds, and then there was this actually a battle between the older me and my younger me. And the younger me, by the fact I'm going back on stage, maybe my younger self is coming back. So I had these sunglasses. And so it just became a real fantastic experience where I sort of, I was playing the songs again. People were laughing, but I didn't mind. It was like, can you believe you thought this would go to number 1? And I just had real fun. And also, my parents had died. My mum had died just before Edinburgh. My dad was ill, and I knew he was going to die when I got back. So it became quite a profound. And they were both from Edinburgh, so it became this sort of mad odyssey back to where I'd sort of spent child back to them, and I had this kind of very through death. There becomes a kind of, realization, life's short. And so I had this responsibility. I thought, I've got to enjoy every second of this. So it became quite a profound experience in lots of ways, that I was at last going to the Fringe to do what I'd always dreamt of doing it. And then for them and all of that. And this is all kind of seeped into the new show a bit as well. So, and I love Edinburgh. You're probably Glaswegian, like bloody Edinburgh.
I'm more swayed to Glasgow than Edinburgh. I have in recent years started branching out to Edinburgh. Some of the gigs you can't get in Glasgow, so I need to go to Edinburgh now. So, going to see Oasis at Murrayfield. That's the first time I've been at Murrayfield last year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Absolute brilliant experience. But I think I got a couple of gigs coming up this year in Edinburgh. And I'm going to try and make it out to yourself at the Fringe, because
okay, brilliant.
I think it'll be cracking to see your next show. What's the dates for that? Have you got the dates?
Yeah, it runs from the 6th of August to the 17th. It may be extended, but I thought I'd do a shorter run. But now, so, and I'm in the with Just the Tonic in the, where am I? The cask room in the Mash House down on Cowgate. So it's kind of dingy venue, but it suits because it's all in the world of gigs and that kind of thing. And it's effectively it's the same, similar show, but I'm trying to make it as a rock star, then as vicariously as a manager, and then maybe, and it's brought up to the present day a little bit. Yeah.
Where can people get your books, your physical books as well? Apologies, obviously I've not read them yet. I only kind of got in touch with you in the last week, so it's something that I'll be going back and reading. For the listeners, whereabouts can you get them? Well,
the first one, Anoint My Head, they're both through Omnibus Press. They're coming out on July the 16th. So they're actually not out at the moment because they're reissuing the first one. It's with a new cover, and then so there's Anoint My Head, How I Failed to Make It as a Britpop Indie Rockstar is the one that came out in 2021 and being reissued, And then the new one is Soho Days Camden Nights, the Chronicles of a Failed Indie Rock Star. I'm doubling down on the failure here. And yeah, July 16th, and then you can get them from wherever. They'll be in bookshops or platforms and audio books and all that sort of thing. And I'll have some for sale at the show as well if anyone can make it to the Edinburgh show.
Yeah, I mean that's perfect timing for me, mid-July, because I get a couple of weeks off, so I'll get there and I'll smash them out then.
They're quite fast. I mean, it's quite a light read. That's a nice thing. I spent a long time working them to make them as quick a read as possible. I wanted to try and write a funny book about music, trying to make it in music, really.
I mean, like in the last few years, like I've obviously Simon's book was a brilliant read.
Yeah.
And I read Steve Diggle's book.
Yeah.
I think last summer, absolute brilliant book again, man. So I've got right back into my reading the last few years. So
there seems to be a real thing of a lot of people in music writing now. I mean, a lot of memoirs and things coming out. It's become a real maybe we're all don't know what else to do or something, but yeah, there's some great stuff out there.
I mean, if you look a lot of the Britpop guys have gone round doing the kind of audience with tours as well and bringing out a book off the back of it. I think Steve Craddock's done it. I think John Power's done it, and Danny McNamara, I was speaking to him on Friday. I think he's going out on the road next year to do kind of a spoken word tour and accompanying his book.
I think people like the story behind the story, don't they? Like they know, like, because this music's not going away, is it? You know, like they're different scenes. It keeps going bigger and bigger, and then eventually people go, well, what was it like? You know, what are these bands like? What's the story? And people love all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So August 6th to the 17th, I think he said, for Edinburgh Fringe shows. I'll post all the links in the show notes for people. But the last part of the podcast, obviously, it's called Time for Heroes.
Yes.
I asked my guests to pick 4 heroes to come for dinner.
Oh yeah.
Why are they your heroes, and what would you cook for them? They can be dead. They can be dead or alive. They can be musicians, sports people, whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I've 4 heroes. If you can whittle it down to 4, some people have ended up picking about 15.
Oh yeah, God, it could go on. I started writing older people. Well, immediately it springs to mind. I'd have Billy Connolly. Because, I mean, the guy, more than anyone, I mean, what he could, I'm just going to wet myself when he starts talking. And I just love everything, you know, his stories and and then he's kind of all his history stuff and his just enthusiasm and his interest for stuff. But it's just the funniest person ever, I think. And I grew up with him, the Scottish connection. So I definitely have Billy Connolly there. I'd also, as a writer, P.G. Woodhouse, again, someone put me onto his books, you know, maybe about 10 years ago. I thought, is it just like Jeeves and Wooster? It might be a bit like the TV show, which I never really found that funny with Fry and Laurie. And I got into the books. Oh my God. I just the sort of innocence of them and how funny they were, the writing. And he wrote like 90 odd books and they're just every line. And it's beyond genius. You kind of go, I put him, for me, I mean, he's even beyond Shakespeare for me. So P.G. Woodhouse. I didn't want to, I was thinking about this. I thought, I don't want to just be picking all blokes as well, because it was just like, then I was going to say Robert Smith of The Cure. And I thought, God, this is a bit blokey kind of thing. So is it sort of people that have inspired you or,
yeah, whatever's kind of had an influence in your life, whatever's had a drive or whatever
well,
you...
There's a show I went to see. I'm going to make it a little bit more up to date. And I was really toying about, can I do this Edinburgh show? And I've written this sort of thing thinking, this is just what you know, when you're about to give up on something. And then I went to see Weir with Natalie Polides. I think that's her name. She's from LA and she does these one-woman shows. And that is 90 minutes in Walthamstow of the best theatre I've ever seen. It was absolutely unbelievable what she did. Mm-hmm. As far as, and it was just what you can do with a stage. And she had 1,000 people on the edge of their seats. And it was hilarious. It was dramatic. And then she just did it on her own. And it was a kind of, so I'm going to stick her in there.
Natalie Polides, that was
yeah. She's had this kind of really cult. But I think as far as if you're doing a one person show, you wouldn't get any better than that. It kind of it's like a retelling of Romeo and Juliet meets kind of Bugs Bunny via 80s Brat Pack movies. I mean, it was just unbelievable. So that was really inspiring. What else who else? Maybe I could put footballer. Yeah, Robert Smith would have to go in there because as I've subsequently become, I'm now being Robert Smith in a Cure tribute.
Yes. So we never spoke about that actually. So how did that come about?
As a kind of mad one. I mean, because part of the show, I'm sort of complaining about with Camden. One of the things that ended the heyday a bit was not just kids going east. There was this sort of gastro pubs. The venue starts shutting, and then they sort of reopen with lovely triple fried chips cooked in goose fat, and then and I sort of gone. The other big threat to the venues was tribute bands. You're putting on these new bands, and then no one's there, and then a tribute band sells out the venue. So they became the enemy for a while. So in a kind of can't beat 'em, join 'em moment, years later, I went to see the Smythes at the Electric Ballroom. Under duress, I don't really want to go to this, but I'll pop on that. I just had the best night, just singing along Smith songs. And then the next day, I think it popped in my head like a Cure tribute band. Of course, it was like a destiny call, like the sky opened, and when I was in the Pointy Birds, people said, "Oh, you sound a bit like Robert Smith." And I'd been to a Halloween party a bit earlier, and everyone thought I'd gone as Robert Smith because when I put the wig on, so you look like you Robert Smith, and I put all these things together, and I went up to this guy at my local Lido swimming pool. I said, "Do you want to form a Cure tribute band?" He went, "Oh, they're my favourite band." He said, "My best mate's a bass player, and he's a big Cure fan." I went, "Okay." And then the next day, this guy Jeremy came up to me. He goes, "Are you forming a Cure tribute band?" And I said, "We might be." "Yeah, why?" And he said, "Oh, I play keyboards." I said, You're in." And then someone said, "Well, we just need a drummer now." On day 3, this guy goes, "Oh, you should ring Jimmy," And Jimmy was this guy I'd met at something, and I phoned Jimmy, and he goes, "I've been waiting for this call." I said, "Cure tribute band?" And he went, "It was like Ocean's 11. And we booked a rehearsal room. And I mean, it turns out Jimmy used to play for the Commodores. I mean, we've got the best band, and that thing about the chemistry, it was like, oh, okay. So then we put a 1 gig in at the Dublin Castle, sold out, people sung along. We started, these decisions of do you wear a wig or not? And it's just been a total joy. We just do these shows now. We're now headlining the Electric Ballroom next January on an all-dayer. We'd sold out the 100 Club. So
that's amazing, man.
The narrative of the failed Rockstar failed is sort of, everyone's going, "Oh, this is book 3, isn't it?" You kind of end up going full circle. So it's it's just been great fun, and I don't know where it's going to end the tribute stuff, but I'm fully behind. And also, I think tribute bands are helping venues now because without them, these venues are going to close. It helps keep those venues right so they can support new music. So it's more of a friend than a foe, I think now.
Yeah, I mean, you get full festivals that have tribute bands and stuff like that. There's so much. I had probably around about the same time I spoke to Simon all the years ago, I had a Teenage Fan Club tribute band on the podcast. They were called Star Sign. They were out in Australia. One of the singers / guitarists, he moved to Glasgow to be in a band, and he was here 6 months, and him and his girlfriend get deported. And it wasn't until he went back to Australia that he formed this Teenage Fan Club band. And you were that close. You could have been actually up on stage playing with Jerry Love and all that. And you had to travel across the world and back again to do it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you were going to chuck in a footballer. I like a wee footballer, so chuck a footballer in there as well.
Kenny Dalglish should have to be.
Do you know what? See, there's guys of a certain vintage. I had the drummer for Smaller on. I think he was my last guest. Obviously, he's for Liverpool, but that's who he chose as well, Kenny Dalglish.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was like, there's so many football, and I love Gascoigne and but yes, there's also got a bit of a Scottish guitar. I mean, I could go on and on. There's just so many. Mark Hollis from Talk Talk. I think they are the greatest. He's the greatest of them all. That album. There's a review of the album Spirit of Eden on Pitchfork, where that they're very stingy on their votes. They'll give it something like 7.4, 7.5. You get an 8 out of 10, but it's 8.1, and it's all these top music critics. Talk Talk is 10 out of 10, Spirit of Eden, and the essay on why it's a 10 out of 10 is almost as good as the album. It's like Yeah, it's just a masterpiece. And the interviews with Mark Hollis, with him talking about Spirit of Eden, because he then disappeared. The music disappeared, like his albums became more and more ambient. And by the final one, it's not the band split up, they just like vanished, and he vanished. So that I'd love to. And Simon interviewed Mark Hollis as well. So that was like, wow, God.
It has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today, Andy.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
Really enjoyable hour speaking to you. Your story's fantastic. I'll reiterate for the viewers, Andy's show at the Fringe, August the 6th to the 17th.
Yeah.
So I'll post all your links on your websites, links for it and all that. So
I'll send you a flyer and stuff as well if that's any use.
That'd be grand. But an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Okay. But thank you very much.
Thank you too. Brilliant.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, please contact me on the email timeforheroespod@gmail.com, or you can get me on Instagram at timeforheroespodcast. Thanks very much. We'll be back soon with another episode.